Hey, we're here and we're back. This is the Scaling Secrets podcast. Ian Blair is here. He is the founder and president of the Blair Group. And Ian spent his first career building, running, selling, and investing in businesses in the US and Canada. And we're going to find out some of those secrets to Ian's success, what to do, what not to do, how to create vision, align our teams through team communication and empowerment. We might even get into exit strategies, succession plans. There's so many things that we need to know about. And even if we've heard of some of these things, it always helps to revisit the big picture, the big ideas. So Ian, glad to be speaking with you.
It's a pleasure. Pleasure to be speaking with you also.
Yeah, and we're a couple of guys here having fun. And so we introduced you a little bit, we hyped you up, but in your own words, what is your focus these days? What's your passion? What gets you excited?
It really is around some of the things that you mentioned, aligning a team to a vision and empowering that team through steady state communication and using the strengths of various team members and what they do well to run with whatever it is that their part of the play is.
And what sort of mindset do we need to get into? Because it seems like it's a certain type of brain is needed for this to happen, right? There's some of these guys that they really think about their people and they kind of do a lot of the deep work and thinking about this. They're not necessarily in a rush, like, oh my gosh, my team's bad, let me go fix some things. It feels like it's maybe like a long-term process that requires a lot of thinking, communicating, reiterating. So like, am I on the right track there? Like, how do we
Oh
need to be
yeah,
thinking in order to make this happen?
absolutely. I mean, the fact, as you know, trust is everything. So everybody on the team has to trust one another. At the same time, having what I call a healthy tension is important, so that even though there's trust there, there's not a, and this comes along with trust. There's not a fear of using a hockey analogy. If the right winger is out of place, as a teammate, you got to yell over to that right winger and say, "Hey, man, come on, you got to get up." And then that right winger not take that personally. So there's got to be this healthy tension around debating ideas, debating strategies, in order to come up with the best decisions in the team.
And what you're describing here theoretically sounds like a great place to work, right? Where everyone trusts each other, but everyone challenges each other as well and isn't afraid to beat up the ideas and speak up, but it's also not a toxic, bullying workplace sort of environment. And so what is your part in this? Are you someone that goes and like changes up the workplace, or like just what's your position as far as making this amazing thing happen?
What I try to do is not. I don't have uh, a dictatorial style. So although in the end, I'm a huge believer that if you're the CEO of a company or leader of a team, I mean, in the end, the buck does stop at you. So if something hasn't worked, it is your responsibility to have made it work, and you got to step back and figure out, okay, what could I as a leader have done better? In some cases, that means replacing, in an extreme case, replacing, a team member if that's what it comes to. But for the most part, for me, it's about letting people do what they do well. That you have these smart people on your team, and to do what it takes for them to have the resources that they require to be successful in their job. When there is tough decisions to be made, then that's my job to make a decision that is involving the company as a whole, and I try to seek the best advice from each of my team players if I'm making the decision that they're not authorized to make or what have you. It's my role's decision to make. So I always say, I want to know that saber-toothed tiger is behind that rock. And so if somebody's seeing that saber-toothed tiger behind that rock, I want them to tell me so that then I can, make the decision around, okay, we're still going to go in that direction, but we're going to put a net over that tiger and we're going to go around it and we're going to be successful with that route. Thank goodness, thank you, you've told me about that saber-tooth tiger. So that's sort of what I try to do in a team setting. And there's no finger pointing. There's no if something didn't work out, there's no It's we as a team did this. Ultimately, if it were a decision I made the decision. If anything, it's on me. So that's the style that I try to set up as a culture in a company.
I love it. And it seems like a lot to navigate, right? That there's, like you said, there's that element of ownership and of the awareness and of the communication and of getting the right people in place and guiding them without getting in their way. And it seems like there's been a lot of this discussion, especially these last few years, about emotional intelligence of, well, when something doesn't go wrong, your natural human tendency is to react and get mad and blame others because that's just what feels natural, and that's what maybe even feels better, right? Because if it's someone else's fault, and I don't even like that word, then there's nothing for us. We're perfect. We didn't do anything wrong. But then to have that deep introspection and to say, well, hey, I'm not going to cry over spilled milk, but here's what's went wrong. What's done is done, and let's kind of try to do better. It seems like it's like 5 to 10 times the amount of work, whereas or as much as thinking, right? Something goes wrong, I do all this thinking about it, whereas in the past, like 80s and 90s, you just would fire the person or would get mad. And now we're living in a more enlightened age, at least hopefully. And so you mentioned about some of these hard decisions, and do any come to mind? Are there any hard decision type stories that you feel like are great to share on a podcast like this?
Oh boy, yeah. There's. I do want to expand on one point there before I answer or give you hard decisions. And I don't want what I said to be confused with there's no responsibility or accountability within a team. Because using an extreme example, if you have a team member that just plain and simple didn't come through because they didn't feel like it, and let the team down on their responsibility, then there has to be a discussion around that. And whether it's in the team or in a one-on-one, there has to be, hey, what happened there? I mean, this can't happen again. Look what it did. There has to be accountability, and it's so important not to let that sort of stuff fester. You've got to have, I call it plus delta feedback constantly. So if somebody's done something outstanding, man, you got to let them know that and why that was outstanding, how that affected the team, the organization, how can we do more of that? And if somebody hasn't come up to what, their potential is, you got to tell them that also. You got to have that respectfully. You've got to have those conversations. So, and I think that's what builds the trust also is that it's not finger pointing, but it is, we all as a team have to improve. So, stressful decisions, boy, they're every day. I always try to, and sometimes there's decisions that we all face, as you know, that, we don't necessarily want to face. I often remind myself, and I write little notes for myself, and one of them is, I get to do this. And there's lots of uncomfortable, unpleasant things that we have to do in life, and certainly in business. And I try to remind myself, okay, I get to do this for whatever reason. I've been put in this position to make this tough decision. Parting ways with a team member for whatever reason is always, a tough decision to make, because if we've done the right job in hiring that person in the first place, and we have done our best to make sure that we've supplied that person with all the resources they need and all the feedback they need, but for whatever reason the fit just hasn't worked. It could be 6 months, it could be for whatever reason things have changed in their life and the way we do things, and they haven't been able to adapt. Then those conversations and decisions to let somebody go from your organization are ones that I take very seriously, and probably, although I don't hesitate to do it because it has to be done, at the same time, you're affecting somebody's life, so you're really trying to, in my opinion, do it I try to take the high road in all circumstances and make sure that we do it in a way that has set that person up so that they're not just out on the street the next day, so to speak. So those are always tough ones. Business decisions around deal making are always tough, as when you're trying to get a contract for something that can be uh, um, significant for your company, and the bigger those contracts are, obviously the more risk that comes along with them, and not letting emotions get tied to just wanting to get it, making sure that you're staying with the principles of your strategic pricing strategies and so on, and that you're not promising something or signing the dotted line on something that you really can't come through with, just in the temptation because you want this thing. Um, so those are always very tough decisions. And did I leave too much on the table? Did I, did we go too high? Boy, we really need this project. Those sorts of things are always tough because you can't read the other person's mind. You're just trying to do your best and in negotiating a good contract. So those are always big decisions, and can be very stressful depending on the market conditions at the time.
Wonderful. And so, like, hearing some of these fun stories and your answers, it seems like a helpful tool is to hit the situation with lots of little questions. Like, right? Like you have this huge problem and you don't have these big, massive questions, but little things like you say, well, there's this person that it seems like they're not working out very well in their position. Well, do they have the resources they need? Are they equipped enough? Are they being accountable? How are they working along with the other members of the team? Have I given them enough time to make the mistakes or to try to make it work? If they do make the mistakes, have we had those conversations? Like, I think it's very helpful in the way that you describe that, just like hit it with lots of little questions. And then something else I made a mental note of was you saying, I get to do this. And that's really helpful too, because as adults, there's so many things that sometimes I don't want to get up in the morning, right? I don't want to go and have this difficult conversation, but hey, I'm stepping up. I get to do it. And it's just part of what my responsibilities are. And on the other side of firing this person or of correcting this person or changing their position, whatever the problem solving is, on the other side, then many amazing things happen. And so it's great that you are an introspective person and a caring person, just from what you're saying here, and positive. But were you always like this? Was there some sort of, like, were you born this way, or was there some kind of like personal transformation that you had to go through in order to achieve some of these successes?
Well, I think we're all a product of influence from the time that we're hanging out with our parents as a toddler, and learning from the way that they deal with situations to the awkward growing stages of adolescence and teenagers as we're getting into different peer groups, and there's a lot of luck there, for sure, and in who ends up sort of being a peer model and which group you're in, and that sort of thing. Different coaches you've had in your career, and or in your earlier ages and things like that. So I think for those of us that are lucky enough to kind of win the lottery on meeting the right people, and for whatever reason learning from those people, observing those people, observing and maybe connecting the dots on their behaviors and how that has impacted the people around them, I think has had a huge influence on me, and continuing to learn and continuing uh, to be curious, and to listen to the way other people handle things, whether that's through reading, whether that's through podcasts, whether that's just through plain and simple continuing to observe those people that are around you, and emulating and kind of working that into your own behavior system.
I love this connecting the dots metaphor that you explain here, because you think about, you are thrown into a lot of situations, right? You don't choose your parents. when you're growing up in school, a lot of times you don't really choose your friends, or you just kind of fall into what there is. And it's up to you to decide, am I going to just let their bad behavior rub off on me, or look at, well, what's good and what's bad about what they're doing? And am I okay acting like this person, associating with this person? What's the saying? When you lie down with dogs, you get fleas. And
Right.
so you kind of look at, well, is are they a good person? Are they helping others? Are they kind, compassionate, or are they the opposite of that? And you can look at those good and bad factors and make that kind of sort of painful decision to change who your network is, and then also have that steady supply of information, right? The podcasts, the reading, the self-help, and all that sort of stuff. And I think that's really helpful and important, because you hear all these really scary statistics about how people just, they don't read, they don't learn. When they do watch TV or YouTube, it's something just for entertainment, which is fine, but like they have stopped reading, right? A huge chunk after high school, after college, there's not even one single book they read for like decades later, for the rest of their entire life. Not one book read. And that's scary, right? Because you get stuck in your own thinking, your own limiting beliefs, and then the bubble that you're in and those same people. And that's definitely not growth. And so, as far as you and what you've accomplished, right? You've done all this sort of stuff with like strong culture and exit strategy, succession planning. Out of all like the things that you've accomplished, is there anything that stands out as it's like really excited you, like it made you come alive like nothing else?
Well, I think that's the beauty of business, in that it is, it's a situation where you're working with people, and you know business is people. So any circumstance that I can look at and really think, wow, together, and in some way I was a catalyst to, doing this great thing with these people, and see the satisfaction that they're getting out of their roles and what we built together, and that sort of thing is always it. Um, one of something I'm heavily involved in now is a company that um, a number ran into some problems, tried to grow too fast, and got ahead of its skis, so to speak. And I was invited to come in and see if what I could do to help through my leadership in turning it around. And what I discovered is that the uh, previous, call it president, was a micromanager, was somebody that didn't empower the team, and was trying to be kind of a one man show in growing this business. And when I got involved, things were worse than anybody had imagined, when financials were uncovered and whatnot. But in any case, what I discovered was, man, there's an amazing team here, and they just haven't been empowered. So forming this council, so to speak, this leadership team that together proved to be absolutely relentless in the pursuit of turning this company around, which which was done, and it's a highly profitable company now, and continues to be powered by this team. But if it had not been for doing that and seeing this group of people, all of us, in certain situations where, in fact, relentless became one of our core values, because we were faced with just deep challenges, of whether they were cash flow challenges, whatever they were, and like, okay, all right, well, that's the situation. Who's got an idea? And then somebody would put their hands up. I got an idea. Let's do this. Yeah. Great idea. Let's do that. And then and it was done. So that was extremely challenging, for sure, and but satisfying to no end. That's an example of, again, a team coming together and making things happen.
And a lot of what I've been hearing here about a lot of your solutions are the team, right? And of being a good people person and empowering your team and asking questions. And sometimes when you see this in action, it looks really easy, right? When it's done right, it's like it seems very effortless. But then it's easier said than done, especially if someone does not have the momentum or the practice of being a good people person. And so you hear some of these things that are are really lacking or missing, right? Like of giving someone a compliment, or in just listening to what's between the lines, or just like asking them where they're stuck. And so, like, what do you think is missing these days when it comes to the people skills and the team building? Like, what, there's all sorts of advice, all kind of like concepts and podcasts and things like that. But what is kind of the unspoken problem? What do you think does not get enough attention when it comes to team building?
Well, I think one thing that frustrates me is when I witness, whether it's two individuals or more, complaining about another individual, whether it's somebody on their team, in the organization, what have you. Rather than, and I always say, and if I'm brought into that, I always say, well, let's get them in the room, let's get them on the phone, let's talk about this. Have you talked to them yet? And that frustrates me to no end. Is you've got to communicate directly with the people that are involved, because otherwise it's really no more than gossip and perception as to what this other person that is being complained about, or kind of back to what you uh, brought up earlier in our discussion, the blame game and that sort of thing. So I think what can be lacking is that communication, and it can be exhausting, to take the time, and stressful, and sometimes confrontational, but to get that person in the room and hey, let's talk about that. Jim here is a little frustrated because his perception is of this. What's up with that? And oh, geez, well, this is the situation. This is what we were up against. Da 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 da. So that's why I haven't got this done yet. Oh, okay. Well, and maybe you should have approached Jim earlier to let him know that too. So whatever the circumstance is getting the one-to-one, the people in the room that are involved in this frustration. I often observe is lacking. There's a lot of talking behind, and therefore sometimes decisions are made, and maybe it's a termination decision without having dug into anything, and you've just terminated, or you put somebody off to the side that is really a great player, and you just needed to have this discussion. So I think that communication is often lacking, and it's not a generational thing. Like this is at all levels, whether it's, people in their 60s, people in their 30s, there seems to be that can be a situation that is missing.
Well, complaining is hard to unlearn as a habit, right?
Yeah.
And the gossip can be very sneaky, and it can be very tempting to just join in as part of that. And it's great that you sort of have that boundary where you won't tolerate it, because you think, like, say you have person A and B gossiping about person C. Well, what are there's only probably like four possible scenarios, right? Maybe the person C doesn't know that the problem exists and they need some awareness, or maybe they do know and there needs to be a better approach. But either way, is gossip really a solution to any problem? Probably not. It feels good temporarily, but as you said, there might be like this person C might be like really good and really skilled, but then just because of the setup, the situation, then they're not fulfilling their full potential, and it might waste time, waste money. They might end up getting fired, and we don't want that, right? We want to communicate and solve those problems. And so, since this is the Scaling Secrets podcast, I want to make sure that in the tail end here of our conversation, we fit in some of those scaling secrets. So, in all of your decades of experience and all the different people and companies you've jumped into, what do you have to share with us about these secrets to scaling a company?
Well, I think make sure that you've got a vision created, and whether that's every business school stresses, okay, you got to have your vision, you got to have your mission or purpose, your core values, and then build from there. And the reason that is taught is because it's so important. It really is important. But 99% of companies don't get it right. They do it because it's what you have the checklist that goes on the wall, and then it's ignored. It's not, there's no effort to make it clear. So I think number one is use it, like mean it, take your time, whatever that vision is for your company, whatever the core values are of the company, talk about them frequently, make your business decisions around them. When you're making a business decision, point out how you made it, in relation to your core values and your purpose, and spread that word through the organization frequently. Like, that is it. That is your living, breathing plan, so to speak, so that everybody in the organization is aligned to this one way or another from the perspective of their role. So I think that is absolutely critical. And then from there is having your communication rhythm. So that the ad hocs that we spoke of, of where, hey, well, let's get such and such in the room so we can address it now. Those are critical. And then having a more disciplined rhythm. I'm a huge believer in daily huddles. Having the various teams within an organization meeting daily for even just 15 minutes. But at the leadership team at one of the companies that I'm fractional CEO of, we meet every day at 2:01. And it's either call in, often a lot of us are spread out. So, and there that we just come in, talk about anything, decide whether we need to have an ad hoc around it. And then that's what kind of sets things up for the next day. So I think it's around that, creating the vision, making sure everybody is aligned, from the perspective of their roles. They have the leadership that's required. They have the tools that are required. They have everything that's required. And then having kind of the accountability rhythm, which again is around communication on giving that feedback. This is working well. This is why it's working. This isn't working so well. What can we do to be more effective than we already are?
Wonderful. And so it seems like the discipline is required, communication, and just the revisiting of things. So that way, as you said, the values don't become something that just goes on the wall. You never look at it. You don't act by it. So when you take these actions or you strive to something, link it back to that. And then there's definitely that value in the repeat meeting and communicating to see where things are at, see where people are stuck, see what needs more attention. Because if you kind of don't treat that seriously, if it just becomes a, sort of scattershot slapdash, then you get slapdash results. And we don't want that, right? We want a business that is solid, that scales, that is reliable, that runs like a well-running machine. And we can and it's easy enough to hear all these things, but we have to actually hear it again and again and relearn and stay on our game and apply and take some action. And speaking of taking action, so where do you come in this process? If someone says, all right, I have a problem, I need to go and talk to Ian and figure out how things can be solved, what is the ideal person or company? Like, what problem should they have in order to contact you, and how can you help?
Yeah, I think if it's anything that's related around the things that we've discussed, or that they don't even know what the problem is, and they don't know what the next steps are. All they know is, for whatever reason, performance has dropped, or succession is a huge problem for all businesses, whether it's exit strategy succession or whether it's just growth succession. Because as a company is growing, figuring out how do we scale it with, there's only so many great people, they don't grow on trees. So what are the next steps? What do we have to learn that we as leaders have to release in order, for this company to grow? So, I pride myself at being a really good generalist, and so can identify and help with most any problem, and then bring in specialists when if it's an accounting problem, an accounting system problem, things like that, then bring in a specialist to help with that sort of thing.
Wonderful. You're an adaptive problem solver. And you hear about this concept a lot, how the team running this company, they kind of get to these higher levels, but then at some point, like, either the person needs to change or there needs to be a different person in that spot. Otherwise, everything will be held back. And that's a scary place to be at. And it's especially scary because that team or people in that team or the person leading the team might not even know that this is a problem. And we've mentioned a few times in our discussion how important it is for someone on the outside looking in with that fresh perspective to just see what's up, identify the problem, figure out that solution. And in your bio here, it says that your passion is helping companies that are motivated to change direction or to constantly reinvent themselves for long-term success, even in the face of incredible obstacles. And I think that's a wonderful way of thinking about it, right? Something that's fantastic to aspire to. And how can someone reach out? What are some next steps, contact details, website addresses?
You can go to our website, the blairgroup.com. My email is Ian, IAN, at blairgroup.co. Or you can give me a call at 910-452-7455.
Wonderful. That is Ian at blairgroup.co, 910-452-7455. Make that phone call, send that email, say, help, I don't know what I don't know. We need you to fix things up. We have a people problem. We might have an accounting problem, but get the mess cleaned up, get the bugs out, and Ian Blair is your guy to do that. So as we wrap up our conversation here, Ian, I'd like to kind of put my guests on the spot at the very end here and ask about a fun quote or lesson. So has anything profound, helpful come to mind as far as a quote or lesson to end our discussion on a high note?
I would say a lesson is that often we in our leadership positions don't realize how much people are observing our behavior. And I've got two examples of this in my own life. One was where as a younger man, I said something in a gossip situation about somebody, that about 5 years later, the person that I'd said that about came to me and told me just how hurt they were when they had heard that I said that. And I said it with no thought. I said it was an immature thing to say. And so realizing then how much I had impacted that person's life through this stupid little comment that I made, years before. Conversely, the same has happened to the opposite, where I've run into somebody that I could hardly remember, who apparently I said helped them or said something in their life that was very positive, that they came to me and said, "You changed my life for the better." And it was like something I couldn't hardly remember, and it wasn't necessarily profound or anything. But we as leaders you are being focused on all the time, and the way you behave is going to set the standard for the way that your organization feels it's acceptable to behave. And so if you want to raise the bar on your organization, then you've got to raise the bar on yourself and hold yourself to the highest behavioral standards that align with the core values of your business.
Wonderful. Very helpful. Raise the bar on yourself. You can choose to put out the bad or the good. So why not focus on the positive? And you might say one little thing and it's just another day for you, but 5 years later, they still remember it. So raise the bar on yourself. And the next step as far as pursuing this journey, as we said, email Ian at blairgroup.co, phone number 910-452-7455. Ian Blair, wonderful speaking with you.
Thank you very much. It was great to speak with you also.